Good afternoon, everybody. We are here. This is Ben, Suspicious Observer, and Billy, Mr. Too Tough, here for climate number 5, and we're going to do this live. And first thing we're going to do is give a brief introduction for anyone who's relatively new here. For those of you, the many of you who are not, please just bear with me for a moment. We're going to start over at suspiciousobservers.org, our website, on the climate page. And if you'll bear with me, this is probably the best introduction I could have for how we began talking about the climate issue. So I'm just going to read this really quickly so we're all on the same page. This page, and a lot of what we do here at this channel and on the website actually, is dedicated to very real climate change. We seek to drive focus towards that issue in spite of recent admissions from the anthropogenic global warming crowd that global warming predictions have failed for more than 20 years. This author, being me, advocates for regulation against polluters for 1,000 different reasons, but not one of them has much to do with the climate or anything at all. If you love this planet, you don't want the IPCC's horrendous failure to skew attention from a really important climate issue, and you don't care at all for oil companies, I hereby challenge your intelligence to understand how they could have failed so miserably. If I may add something there, what we need to do going forward. Now, this page has a lot of really informative videos. If you haven't seen them, I really recommend coming over and checking them out. But we're going to spend a lot of time today talking about some new stuff that's going on, because the anthropogenic global warming crowd, and more importantly, their dogs of war, have just made a really, really big mistake. They have taken things way too far. And most of you who are not new here know we're talking about what just happened with Lennart Bengtsson. But first things first, a lot of this video is going to be featuring stuff from the Times, thetimes.co.uk. Absolute opened the floodgates today on some of these issues, today and yesterday, bringing a lot of it to bear. Now, a lot of this stuff is pay to read, so I can't really show you all of it. I do recommend you hop over there, and if you're interested in it, maybe go ahead and give them a subscription. You can thank me later, Times. But, for example, this one, talking about what we were just mentioning, the Lennart Bengtsson issue. Very, very distinguished person, and he was bullied out of his position in the same way that has been happening for over a decade now with these global warming scientists and these global warming bullies. What happens is they pull your funding, or they threaten to pull your funding. Your job is threatened, your reputation is threatened, and you're basically ostracized. It's quite fortuitous that we put we resubmitted our speech video where we talk about some of the stuff that's been going on, and we were talking about some of the bullying that's been going on, and just literally days later, possibly the biggest name to become an official skeptic gets treated in this way. And I don't know if you put his name above John Coleman, the man who started the Weather Channel, another climate skeptic. But this is getting ridiculous. A couple of days ago, Lennart Bengtsson, if you don't know, he decided to join, and I will scroll down here. He decided to join the Global Warming Policy Foundation, and within just days, he was so bullied and so, intellectually assaulted that he was forced to resign, even stating that if this continued, he would have to fear for his health and safety. And this is not something new, unfortunately. This has been going on for the entirety of time that the IPCC has been doing this. And most of the people who come out and say that they've been harassed only do so once. I I shudder to think of how bad their second round of bullying or threats were, that they kind of dropped the situation at that point. But kind of moving on, and we'll stick with the times. This is something that, you know, when I said there is a tsunami of truth riding hard at the coastline of the green agenda, this is what I mean. People are losing their fear. These top scientists have been I'll phrase this another way. When they're not bullying, they're committing academic fraud, because they cover up papers and refuse to publish papers and studies that are damaging to their propaganda line. It doesn't matter if it is perfectly well done science, perfectly cited and sourced. They will commit academic fraud and withhold it. This is how they get their alleged consensus on climate change. I'm going to move on one more. And look where we are. We're still with the times. You guys did an absolute great job today. I mean, this is just, I'm at a loss for words at how happy I am. But on this crackdown that's ordered on climate change skeptics, if there's one, I'm not going to show you the actual article, and I would want you to go look at yourself. This would be it. They're talking about now journalists being ordered not to talk about climate change skepticism. This is the government directly interfering with the BBC even. And Andrew Miller, you're now in our intellectual crosshairs. That hasn't been a fun place to be in the past. Last but not least for today, Dr. Roy Spencer, former NASA scientist. This guy has done a lot of really good work, and one of his latest is a special on the bullying of Benson. Again, he talks here about the papers, the people who stop their papers or proposals from being funded, sometimes for the weakest of reasons. I mean, this is real. This has actually been going on. And when I say here we go, the fear is now gone in these scientists, I have to imagine. They cannot do this to people like Lennart Benson. They cannot do this to people like Roy Spencer. And, you know, I believe this would be John Christie right there, and that should be Richard Lindzen. You can't do that to these people. It doesn't work that way. Anthropogenic global warming crowd, if you are merely on board, please rethink things. We are not climate change deniers. We are not for deregulation. In fact, if you just watch the first 60 seconds of the speech, I promise you'll watch the rest. All right? I absolutely hate being called an oil boy. I have a couple other videos which you can go find. They're not too difficult to find if you'd like, where I put some more than harsh words towards them. And please, oil companies, don't send anybody to my house for that. But in all seriousness, this has to stop. It will stop now. Climate change is very real. We're not denying that. Nobody's denying that. But what's really happening right now has very little to do with CO2. The more we learn about this, and literally at this point I can say the vast majority of the information can be found in one of these videos, and on this page I did include climate number 4 down there because that's not included in the original speech, where climate 1 through 3 pretty much are well summarized in the speech. This is what it is. This purely academic fraud, these threats where some of the top scientists in the world have to fear for their health and safety, this is criminal. Ban Ki-moon, have honor and stop this, please. Barack Obama, have some honor and stop this, please. We will not just sit back while our way of life is hijacked by a lie. And if you try to oppose the lie, you are threatened. This is not how it's supposed to work in the United States, and it's not how it's supposed to work anywhere else in the world. I haven't always been calm, and I haven't always been kind. And I don't see a lot of room for that in the future if this continues. People like Roy Spencer, Lennart Benson, John Coleman, Richard Lindzen, John Christie, everybody else I mentioned, and in the 700 international scientists who dissented on climate change. Hold on, let me just go Global Warming Petition Project. I think that's the name of it, and I even spelled that incorrectly, but Google knows what I'm trying to do. Over 9,000 PhDs petitioning this global warming issue. Did you guys know that? If you didn't know that, why didn't you know that? It appears that in the UK, at least, the mainstream media is trying to give climate change skeptics a voice. CNN, what is your problem? ABC, CBS. Fox, I know you do this, but I'm not a big fan of you, so I'm sorry. In truth, my frustration right now may seem childish and out of line, and it feels like I shouldn't be getting this upset. Nobody should be getting this upset over this, but folks, if you've taken a read of Agenda 21, and not so much the goals of Agenda 21 or some of the policies that are being implemented because of Agenda 21, but if you look at the people who were in charge of the policy and who were writing some of the initial bits of it, and more importantly, who was writing the major documents upon which Agenda 21 was based, and you find out that they say things like they want major depopulation in the world, or they think that if there's another, they think that the American way is detrimental to humanity's survival. I think a lot of things got to change in this country, but their discourse is the scariest of types. Those very, very rich, senile people who get caught saying something ridiculous. And I'm not talking about that idiot who owns the Clippers. I'm talking about people who say things that make you question what would happen if they had control over the entire planet. And don't you realize that's what this global warming thing is? Everything from, and it's not just the environmental side and the economic side, everything down to education, medicine, access to everything from healthcare resources to technological resources. These are all now being dictated by Agenda 21 and being driven and pushed for the most part by this global warming lie. And here's the thing, the people who are pushing this have come to the conclusion that something needs to change, that we as a species have screwed things up. And there are a lot of people who might agree with that. They also don't believe that there's any chance that we will change on our own. So how do you get us all to change? If they truly believe that this is what has to happen or the human race will perish, I might see somebody putting forth a cockamamie idea, well, if these people won't do it, let's just try to get them to do what's necessary to survive by any means necessary. But you've gone about it in a very wrong way. The ends no longer justify what could arguably be a benign means. I'm sorry, the arguably benign ends are no longer justified by these means. When people get threatened, and when there is no longer the freedom of the press, and when there is academic fraud going on, and when top scientists are fearing for their health and safety, Here we go, folks. That tsunami riding hard at the coastline is now in plain view. I know some of the AGW crowd is just so dang stubborn that they are not going to move from the sand. They're going to keep looking at this. They're just going to keep looking down and screaming their screams and just pushing this lie over and over again. And the only thing that they can keep saying over and over again, these are their arguments now. One, the science is settled. Everybody says the same thing. Well, they don't all say the same thing, and especially if you weren't covering up so many of them. But the ones that have been in agreement on global warming have been pathetic failures for more than 20 years now. There is no merit to those models whatsoever. They bear no resemblance to what has been borne out in the observational evidence. So yeah, the science may be settled for a few people, but it's been settled wrong for more than 2 decades. You could say, well, okay, fine, but we should still be doing something about human pollution. No kidding, granted. That's part of our whole thing. There's 1,000 reasons to regulate, 1,000 reasons to keep our planet clean. But do you know that there's a way bigger chance of us entering a mini ice age soon than anybody dying of overheating from global warming? This has happened in the past. A lot of the signs point to it again. If you don't know what we're talking about, if you're new here, I recommend you come to this page. If you can understand that we're not oil boys, we're not for deregulation. We want to keep focus on the climate change issue, even though all of these global warming predictions have just been huge, embarrassing failures for more than 20 years. But you need to understand all the facts about it. You need to understand what's actually happening to real people just trying to speak the truth. The kind of people who, let me come back to my Google Hangout. You know, the kind of people who are going to still be here this far into the video. Those people trying to get the truth out, those are your people. Let's quickly go through some of these things I've been talking about while you've just been staring at my logo. TheTimes.co.uk under Thunderer. This bullying of climate science skeptics must end. Again, from TheTimes.co.uk. Scientists in cover-up of damaging climate view. Again, we're at the Times. Crackdown ordered on climate change skeptics. And the latest from Dr. Roy Spencer. We're going to have all these links for you guys. If you haven't seen the climate page, go check out the climate page. This is what I read to you at the beginning here. Climate change is very real. Please don't let the failure, the utter miserable failure of global warming for the last 20 years, please don't let that take away from the focus on climate change. But you also need to realize what's been happening. You need to realize how they got their consensus. And you have to realize that now that the scientists are losing their fear of these bullies, we're starting to have real questionable things like the press being ordered not to talk about something. This is how freedom is put in jeopardy, piece by piece. Be safe, everyone.